Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, apologies for the slightly unusual approach to this. Joe, unfortunately, didn't win the Microsoft Friend of the Year award and was having issues with audio. So we thought rather than me talking to you for half an hour, we'd find a way of getting Joe's valuable insights and opinions over to you guys anyway. So welcome to this session. This is this is the third session we've done now on the FinOps Applied series. This one round, we're looking at the operate pillar. So sort of the sort of last phase, I guess, that we haven't touched on so far, and the real crucial piece where it moves from being an individual sort of one-off exercise and into a living, breathing practice and part of your behavior as a business. I am Don Melly. I'm the group head of cloud here at Ultima. I'm joined by Joe Henderson from Vantage. It's great to have you along, Joe.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Don.
First things first, obviously we're fresh out of FinOps X last week, and you and the Vantage team were all in attendance. What's your highlights from, like, what do you think is the sort of key stuff that was talked about and shared with the world that people in the session could really do with knowing?
Yeah, so busy week, tons of vendors, tons of clouds participating. I think the highlight is just like where this FinOps thing is building towards. So the evolution of when FinOps, FinOps Foundation, this sort of, it was cloud cost optimization before it was called FinOps, how it's evolved over time from a few clouds to kind of just visibility to now it's evolved into SaaS and data center. And then this year it included AI. And there was two sort of pieces of the AI picture. There was obviously FinOps for AI and then AI for FinOps. That makes sense. So it's like tracking AI costs. And then what are you using with AI to manage FinOps? So that was kind of like the highlight. It was definitely the buzzword. The bingo cards were going off anytime someone said AI in a keynote. But yeah, just a busy week, tons and tons of energy there. And I would say AI is the big piece there.
It's not surprising, is it? Microsoft and many of the other platforms, AWS as well.
Yep.
Huge investments into it. And I'm glad you brought up the piece around using AI for FinOps, because the Copilot, ChatGPT, all these tools are now coming out there to allow you to interact in plain language and get insight out of your data and sort of documents and things that float around. Can you share an experience of anywhere within your customer base of partners? Actually, quick loop back. For anyone who doesn't know, Vantage are kind of Joe, sorry, doing this badly, but would you mind just giving a real quick snippet on Vantage? Because that'll set the context of how you're able to get so much experience from so many different partners and customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So just take a quick step back. Sort of the FinOps 1.0 tool set sort of started being built in like 2012, became wildly popular in 2015, 16. And then, COVID hit, cloud, spend takes off. There was this sort of 2.0 FinOps toolset that came out around the 2020 era. So Vantage was one of those. So Vantage is a cloud cost and software cost visibility and optimization engine that helps customers manage their cloud and software costs and then take action upon that. So, so we're managing all the main public clouds as well as software services, the usage-based software services like a Snowflake, like a Databricks, Datadog, things like that. So I've personally been in FinOps for about 8 years since the FinOps Foundation started. I worked at Cloudability way back in the day. So I've kind of seen this evolution go from, just a few clouds getting some visibility. Now it's all the things I mentioned earlier. And it's all about, hey, it's great. You can get visibility kind of anywhere now. Now, what do you do with it? Which is sort of the essence of what we're talking about today in this operate phase.
Yeah, and you mentioned already, like, there's so many tools out there already in and around.
Yeah.
The same situation as many of us service providers, and ISVs for software tools. You have to find new ways to differentiate and compete, and that's usually through added value and insight that you can bring. So it's not just about the tool you offer; it's the support and service. And that was definitely a big part of why we opted to use you guys for our own tooling and the one we use for our customers. So that experience with those customers that you get hands-on, and tying back to the original point around AI for FinOps, where have you seen customers do this really well, and what is it that they're doing that just adds a bit extra to what people do day to day?
Yeah, so we have, so Vantage is a unique company because we have a bunch of tiny little companies that kind of, pay as you go. They'll buy Vantage off the website. And then we've got some large enterprises. So at the FinOps X Conference, we gave a joint presentation with a company called Block. So Block and Square, the payment systems, they're one of our big customers for a couple of years. And so when we have these large customers that are very technically savvy, we work really closely with them as we're developing new technology. So as AI kind of comes about and we needed to make a decision, are we going to build AI into Vantage, or are we going to build AI so it's compatible with whatever the customers are using? So we decided to actually build an MCP server. So sort of this protocol, this server. So whatever the customer is actually using to do AI on their side, they can plug into Vantage, and now Vantage just becomes this enriched data source. So they can still use the platform, but what they can do is, as they're going and doing their job, they're using AI and asking the questions on many different things. They can now start to query sort of FinOps questions where the data is held in Vantage. So we gave a great talk that there'll be a recording on you all can check out from FinOps X, how there's thousands of folks at Block that are actually using the Vantage MCP server, querying it for costs. How much did this team spend last week on X and things like that. So what we're seeing is, some tools are building into their, you log in and use it from their dashboard. But then what we're seeing, Vantage and some others are building it so it's compatible with whatever the customer is using, so they can get answers quicker and they can build it into their workflows.
Nice. So obviously you can't avoid AI these days.
Yep.
The cost models are particularly troublesome. I had a call yesterday with a client where the fundamental question they were asking wasn't, can you help me with this? It's more a case of, I don't even know where the billing starts and how the things compute. Where do you think that cost management tools and AI tools can help support customers in being able to untangle the AI costs that are now going to start showing up in so many more cloud bills?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, when we build integrations or companies build integrations into different technologies, they're like very specific. And then like Vantage, we actually build a custom provider that you can plug in whatever you're using. So I think the tools that are going to be nimble and to be very API driven and be able to connect to whatever, the business is using, they're going to be able to start to manage that. So I kind of see AI right now is where FinOps, cloud visibility was needed, back in that 2012, 2013 area, where people were like, what the heck did I spend last week? I have no idea how to even get this information. So right now what they're doing is they're trying to get this information. They're trying to visualize their AI spend however they can, and then start to pull it into that pane of glass next to their cloud costs, next to their software costs, and now even data center costs. That is a big thing.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Now,
Yep.
with the operate phase, this is all very much around sort of building out that practice, right? It's your governance, it's the processes you take, it's trying to automate decision making. For me, this feels a lot like where DevOps was 5-6 years ago, right? Where as that started coming out, the automation tools were there. Terraform was mature at that point already. It then became more of a cultural challenge rather than a sort of, strictly speaking, a technical one. And that still to this day causes problems with customers when you're trying to go through and create new pipelines and kind of get the processes established. And you're always going to have some sort of friction and challenges when you've got cross-functional teams trying to come together and work together. With FinOps, that becomes a bit extra spicy, doesn't it? Because you've got finance guys who we still see it these days, right? Where people going through adoption for the first time, it's still a major industry move at the moment. And finance teams aren't always fully familiar with and kind of comfortable with utility billing models and stuff like that. You put them in with the tech teams who are, or development teams in particular, striving for agility and freedom, and then the operations teams who want to put some controls on this, but also are beholden to their budgets. This becomes a real cultural pain in the ass to try and solve, and the challenge to get through that. Do you see that playing out? Is that a legitimate concern and fear, or actually, when you get started, does this play out nicely? And kind of, where are customers you see doing it really well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's probably been the most important piece of FinOps, even since FinOps started. So the FinOps Foundation does this survey every year, and they ask what are the biggest challenges for organizations when it comes to cloud cost optimization. Every year, it's either the one or two thing, and is empowering engineers to take action. And so this is all about actually how do you build this into your workflows, and how do you get this going on a consistent basis. So if you go through, the FinOps framework, the inform, that's the visibility, optimize, go get some low hanging fruit. People are pretty good about doing this, but it's just like going to the gym. Like you can go and do a workout, show some quick results, but are you going to continue to work out throughout the entire year? That's actually the position where you can show the ROI that you've built this FinOps practice and it's actually paying off for the company. Because these one-time optimizations or these cool reports you now have are fine, and they're probably powerful for a lot of people, but it really comes down to the ongoing operations of that. And so when you think about it, there's a couple different approaches we've seen over the years where some people kind of do it this forceful approach, like you have to do this, and they kind of, maybe come off a little threatening. And then there's the folks that like, let's just figure out how to build this in the workflows, not make it fun. It's not the funnest thing in the world, but start to get people, aware that this is happening. Start to empower them to take action on this. So a lot of like the recommendations, whether it's a right sizing recommendation or an anomaly alert that will come through from companies or your tools, it's like, how do you get that? Who's going to actually action that? And how do you get those recommendations or actionable things into the backlog of the engineers so that they can, go take that to their sprint? And then how do you participate in that sprint to make sure that it's done in a consistent manner? So the companies that I've seen have the most success with it is they do have either a FinOps person that is assigned to this, that is almost their full-time job, maybe not fully full-time, or they have like a consultancy that's coming in and they're acting as that FinOps person, because that person is the person that can sort of translate the finance language to the engineering language and vice versa. And that person can help manage this. And it's almost like an organizational consultant, as bad as that sounds, but then they can start to set these KPIs. They can start to set these be a part of these sprints and actually make it this sort of like more fun experience where everyone feels enabled and sort of rewarded for taking this on. So yeah, the people that take the approach where, all right, we're actually going to break down silos, we're going to communicate. There's one person or team that's in control of that, and they built it into their workflows. And that means like, what are they using? Like you mentioned Terraform. Can this be done in Terraform? Like, can these alerts be set to Jira? Can they be set to Slack? Like, what is your actual company's like workflow? And then really building into that and not giving up on it. Like if it doesn't work, keep trying and trying and trying. The operate phase, this is like the long game. This is where you've got visibility, you've got some low hanging fruit. Now this is the long game on how you could build this, over the next, 2 to 5 years or whatever, your goals are as a company.
Nice. I mean, one of the things you mentioned there is kind of that piece around, you can go off and do it as a one-off and you can take great savings, but like maximizing that takes that culture. Interesting enough, like I can't say I've been involved in FinOps very long at all as far as sort of individual practicing goes. Everyone's done on the managed service sort of industry those sort of cost-saving recommendation reports and exercises you go through, throw a consultant to the problem, and you do it as a one-off. And the thing that I always found really useful for customers to kind of hear from sort of where I sat on the other side of the table was, it's so easy when you're trying to do this stuff as a practice and it's just one person trying to live it, and you book something in your diary for sort of the last Friday of every month to have a look over and make sure everything is sane and sensible and nothing scary, and you have that there. But it becomes the easiest thing to kick out the diary when it's that sort of, I did my big saving piece and now I'm just trying to do the little bits by myself without making a concerted effort to share the burden, because it's the easiest thing to just reschedule. You're a bit busy on a Thursday evening, you know what, look at my diary for tomorrow, I could really do some more time on this project, I'll bump that till next week. And then you get to that next week, it's the same thing happens over and over again. And we see it when we provide cost-saving recommendations to customers, and you kind of say, here's everything you need. Do you want us to do this for you? No, it's all right, we've got this. But then, it bumps and it bumps. And 3 months later, you're like, okay, so you've missed out on 3 big old chunks of money here for you guys. All it takes is a bit of shared accountability, and you each kind of help bolster that along and make that a living, breathing behavior, not just or a habit, to your point. Which kind of comes around to, I think, the big question that I've got for you is, with all your experience and the raft of customers you've worked with, and you've seen probably both ends of the spectrum of how to do it and how not to, what is the key sort of behavior or mindset that you see early on that is the highest indicator of a successful adoption of FinOps?
So it's a great question. It's an important one. I would say it sort of almost happens before they start their practice if they're like going to build a team or kind of start this thing. So it's about getting that executive alignment before it even starts. So the folks that are actually involving the right stakeholders, the right executives, and starting to talk about potential KPIs, getting them aligned, getting those approved, starting to utilize FinOps metrics. A great one is like an example is like effective savings rate. That's a C-level metric, you know, and a C-level can understand because it's all about like that ROI for the cloud. So start aligning these metrics of what you're going to actually track and that you're going to do that and make sure that everybody's on board. They don't have to be fully on board, but letting them know that this is a thought out process and it's not going to be perfect. And then we're going to start this and we're going to report back and start to interject these metrics and start to interject these results into the meetings that are already scheduled, whether it's a weekly, you know, finance review or whether it's an engineering sprint. So it's the people that actually build their practice, understanding it's not going to be perfect before they even start it. And then once it's there, it is reporting up to, you know, those executives, those continuous metrics that they can see. Because like once, like you need to like, they're going to see these metrics. So whether they're saying, we saved 100 grand last month. That's great. And like everyone understands that, but it's like, we saved 100 grand plus our effective savings rate went from a 24.5 to a 27.6 plus our engineering sprint, the Friday engineering sprints. We were able to take action on anomalies and recommendations. And we took those timelines down from a week to remediate to 2 days. So like having that out there and having those like specific metrics tracked, but then also continuously presented to leadership. They know what's going on so that leader can say, all right, I don't even have any questions because you are proactively giving me this information, and I understand these metrics. So I would say, yeah, the people that the summary is the people that have at least a good idea of what their practice is going to be, some assumptive KPIs, and then they are tracking and reporting that up to leadership throughout the entire year.
You mentioned that sort of start off knowing it's not going to be perfect, and
yeah,
you're going to have to work in. Obviously, continuous improvement is a huge part of the operate phase. What would your advice be to people for how best to kind of facilitate that discussion around shining a light on where things aren't going well or could be better, and how to handle that within a team where a huge part of FinOps is that cross functionality of the people involved in the process. There's a sort of semi-implied you won't necessarily be rubbing shoulders with these guys day in, day out. You won't know them. How do you best handle those sort of conversations with your colleagues?
Yeah, I would say, especially when companies are spending like, plus, $100,000 a month, when the clouds or cloud and software, whatever they're tracking spend is like very large, there's always going to be like wins that you can find. There's always going to be inefficiencies. So my sort of advice is like always have some wins right next to like the challenges that you're going to have. And so like making sure that you're highlighting those against where the challenges are, because like what a lot of people find is, they get excited about this, they do this, and they're like, I just got this recommendation, I'm going to save 50 grand with this. And then you find out that change has a dependency on how the product is even run. So sometimes there's maybe some false hopes, some false starts, where then you need to figure out how to actually make these changes. So finding those quick wins and those cost saving things, because everyone's going to appreciate making sure those are aligned with the challenges that you facilitate to that. So there's always something to find. There's always an inefficiency you can get better at, and placing those next to the tough conversations is good.
With this stuff, I mean, it's always hard to tell when you're sort of in the customer perspective, right? You sat down in your office, you're seeing all the conversations around FinOps. You've got these massive events with thousands of people going, and everyone always talks about that nirvana, right? I guess shining a mirror on this a bit, how prevalent do you think not perfect implementation of FinOps, certainly like a highly mature implementation of FinOps, like how many customers do you think actually have their stuff there yet? Like, is this something that is really that mature? If you're not doing FinOps, you're massively behind. Like, what's the actual reality of it, though?
I would say just a very small percentage probably have it like extremely mature, and even those companies also like understand it's never going to be perfect. So I think the people that are gunning for perfection are going to fail, and the people that are just like understand this is a long game and it's a process, it's there. But times are different now, and so like when I first started FinOps, like these tools existed because people were doing these massive migrations and accidentally overspending by like $1 million and getting in trouble and potentially fired. So like it's like a totally different world now. So like the clouds, they have dashboards and like they've made it a little bit easier. Like these crazy they still happen from time to time, but it's not happening as prevalent. So you're not seeing companies that are going through, oh my God, I accidentally spent $2 million. I'm gonna get fired. Now it's like, how can you best sort of operate and get as efficient as possible? So the name of the game is efficiency. And I would say, depending on the type of organization, like we work with a lot of large enterprises, a lot of like kind of cool kid startups. And I would say maybe like 5% actually would have like what they would admit is like a mature FinOps practice. And everybody else is sort of in that middle range of just getting started or know that it's very, very inefficient. And so a lot of customers come to us and just say, we're ready to build a FinOps practice. We have like a job description. We're ready to hire a FinOps person to work with a consultancy. So they're ready to do it. But yeah, they're far from perfect. And it's always gonna be like that.
No, it's certainly true. It's really good to know. It's always tricky, isn't it? If you don't have a manner to kind of judge other people truly, you just got what they want to say, public face. It gets very easy to feel like maybe you've got massively left behind, and you're a failure in some degrees or whatnot. But I think it's really important to remember that actually, I think that Microsoft's SMB segment, I think it's come over as SMB or SMC. Sadly, they are wildly different, which doesn't help. But they've only, it's a category of customers that is finite, right? It's customers over a certain number of users in Microsoft world. And they worked out, I think they've got only about 35% market penetration for their cloud platform. And you'd assume that at this point in time, Microsoft customers who they're directly managing and looking after, they'd be all over that stuff. But just not so. Like customers haven't yet fully adopted cloud. Like a huge portion of them, not just like small.
Totally.
It dominates the conversation, but actually hardware is still king in the market anyway.
Yeah.
So this leads me to my final question that I've got for you.
Yeah.
Open forum here. What would your advice be for organizations that are looking to adopt FinOps practices?
So my advice would be, this is not a leading question. Dom didn't ask me this before, but figure out a way to plug in and just like figure out what you actually want to manage. Like get real with what you want to manage. Is this just the public cloud? Is it software? Is it data center? Is it AI? Like what is it that you want to actually manage? And just like take a step back and just get a full visibility of like what you have there. Like really do that and lay it all out there of exactly like where you're at as a company, and then get real with like some of like the benchmarks that you could set for yourself and do some form of like assessment, right? Do some form of assessment and then just take a crack at making a plan, like whether, and understanding that it's not going to be perfect, and understanding this is going to be a 1 to 3 to 5 year effort depending on how large your organization is. So doing that, getting all the stakeholders involved and just gathering everyone together, getting a snapshot of exactly what you want to cover, and then building a plan that is not like, oh crap, I have to show some cost savings by the end of Q3 because we have this pressure on us because we're trying to sell the company or something's happening. Those are going to happen every now and then, but that's not really like taking, building a FinOps practice seriously, and building like build a 1, 3, and 5 year plan and see where those differ. And then go from there. But it's just getting like honest with what can be accomplished and actually figuring out what you want to cover. So figuring out how to do an assessment in some form.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Joe, for your time and your insights. Really appreciate it. seeing as you've mentioned the assessment piece, just to call out, guys, if you are looking to start this process, you're looking to implement FinOps in your organization, or you just want to get that first step in, talk to your account manager at Ultima. We'll help you out. We've got the ability to deliver in cost optimization insight assessments for you, give you the low-hanging fruit that you might need to start chipping away and start building that efficiency, to Joe's point. So thank you very much for your time, Joe. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with the slight technical hiccups. We shall, of course, blame Microsoft. It seems only fair. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And yeah, look forward to catching you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.